welcome to the Art of Zenning. I'm in the process of reading two books and I really wanted to share them with you. One of the book is The Brain That Changes Itself, and the other one is, I don't know if you can see it, The Brain's Way of Healing. Now, these two are amazing books about neuroplasticity. What that means is neuro means neurons, and plasticity means changeable, modifiable, or malleable. In the early days of science, scientists believe that our brains cannot be changed. And if somebody was stuck with an injury to the brain, that was pretty much it. There was nothing much that could have been done, and so they gave everyone a fairly grim prognosis when that happened. But now neuroscientists know that our brains are pretty fluid, our brains are neuroplastic, and they can build new neuronal connections. Our brains can rewire themselves, and they can modify and transform, rejuvenate, and change. So no matter how old you are or what condition you've had, there is hope. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not talking about this from a scientific point of view. The reason I'm talking about it from two aspects: I've had practical experience in rewiring the brain with my daughter. My daughter has a rare genetic syndrome called Nalcan-Clefad. What that does is it affects all the sodium and potassium channels in our brains and neuron, and so her brain and neurons cannot communicate with the rest of her body, and especially her muscles. And so when we received the diagnosis, it came with a not so good prognosis. What we decided to do was we accepted the diagnosis, but started doing our own research of how we could help Shauna heal and become more independent. My other reason for talking about this is that science is finally agreeing with what mystics have known all along, that our thoughts create our reality. Our thoughts have an immense power to change who we are, and it even has the power to physically change our brains and our bodies. What I learned with Shauna was there were three key ways of how we can build new neuronal connections, and I have witnessed that happen with my daughter. It doesn't happen over time. It takes months and months of doing the same thing, but even though her brain has shown a deterioration, we've had an upward journey of her skills, only because we engaged in all those things. So number one thing to focus on when somebody has a brain injury is bringing your attention to something. So when you bring your attention to something, you observe, and you observe something, you either learn from it or you change it, right? So what we would do is Shauna has no awareness of her hands and feet. So what we would do is we would constantly bring Shauna's attention to her feet, even though her brain could not interpret her hands and feet. By constantly bringing her attention to them, her brain built that neuronal connection where she could perceive her hands and feet as being able to move, as being there for her to be able to control them. The second, a very important thing that helps with any healing is movement. So what movement does is, it is sort of an action. Movement can also be interpreted as action, right? When you observe something, you bring your attention to something, it leads to a certain interpretation, and what you do is you take a certain action, and that action, that movement, leads to building all those, solidifying the new neuronal connections that you built on your brain. So what we did with Shauna is, even though she could not really move her feet, we would constantly take that, have that motion of moving, taking steps. And what that does is that informs the brain of something new that's happening. So it is now it is a cycle, right? Cycle of observation and movement and interpretation and rewiring. The third thing, and which is the most important thing that I want to share is, letting go of any stressful thoughts, any negativity. So what we did with Shauna is, we, even though she could not participate or engage in a lot of things, um, um, and that led to her being frustrated, we made sure by, modifying things, she was always a part of it. And by making her a part of it, we made sure that she was happy and not frustrated. So that's something, a key, that is a very important part of healing yourself, is that when you let go of all negativity, and you participate in taking action, and then there is no way you would see results. So if you have someone, a loved one, who has had a stroke, or has some cognitive issues, or any other chronic illness or mental conditions, I would really recommend go out there and grab these two books. There are some amazing stories of transformation, and it has really helped us. And just keep moving, keep observing, and stay happy.